Hello, Zimbabwe, and welcome to the show, Sports Perspectives. My name is Tinashe Mapuranga, your host, and today we're talking all things sport with the leader, the head, the captain of the Minister of Sport and Recreation, Comrade Makhosini Hlongwane. Honorable Minister, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
And I guess compliments of the season are in order.
Yes.
We're going to go straight into the meat of why we're here today. Last year, you launched the National Sports Policy, which supposedly gives a thrust, gives a vision of how you'd like to run the ministry or how sport should happen in our great nation. Would you like to give us a bit of detail on that, please?
Yes, first and foremost, we have not yet launched the National Sports and Recreation Policy. That is yet to happen. What happened in August of last year is that Cabinet did pass the National Sport and Recreation Policy. We didn't have one. When I was appointed in September of 2015, we did not have a National Sports and Recreation Policy. Now we do have one, a document that has gone through all the consultative processes, including the conveyancing system of government, critically or crucially that of Cabinet. And that document is now available to the public, especially stakeholders within the sports and recreation movement. Now, in respect of what we have done to operationalize that policy, immediately after the passage of the policy, we set out to decompose the priority areas of the sport and recreation policy document. And we started therefore working on the subsidiary policies that come out of it, amplifying them, elaborating on them, and making sure that they become some sort of a manual that the sector would work with. One of the subsidiary policies that we have put in place is the bidding and hosting policy for international and regional games by our national sport associations and our country. Another is the national colors policy, which which is in the process of being finalized right now. Another is the the Team Zimbabwe selection policy, national selection policy. I can go on the list. But
without going on to the list, let's just talk about the team selection policy. Yeah. What exactly are you trying to achieve by that policy? What does it entail, this team selection policy?
We're talking about how athletes get selected to be part of Team Zimbabwe. When we're talking about Team Zimbabwe, we're talking of this national team that is put together, drawn from whichever code or a composite of the various codes coming together, especially when we're going to the African Games, Region 5 Games, Olympic Games, and so on. Where it is single sport code, we're talking, say, for example, of the Warriors, or the national swimming team, or the national netball team. I can go on the list, that sort of a thing. So we are saying, how does one become a member of that team? How are you selected? What caliber of an individual gets selected to participate in Team Zimbabwe activities? And we define clearly in that policy document that the central thesis of the selection policy is meritocracy. A person is selected to become a member of Team Zimbabwe on the basis of merit. You must merit your position. It must not be through some corrupt tendencies, as we have had, upon my assumption of duty, that previously, for an individual to play in the national soccer team, for instance, they will be asked to pay some money, maybe to the coach or to somebody else.
Do you believe that the current team of the Warriors team that specifically went to Gabon, they're players that do not deserve to be on the team out of merit? You speak of corruption. Do you believe that corruption could have been at play with some of the players on the national team, that they played by virtue of them having paid to anybody who would have influence on having them on the team?
No, I don't. I've never heard anybody speak about that in respect of the current crop of players. I've never heard anybody even make a suggestion in respect of the current crop of players. So in terms of whether or not they merit being in this Team Zimbabwe from a football point of view, when we look at it, especially from a perspective of talent, I think this was the best ever assembly of individual talent or talented players being brought together by Zimbabwe, ever since independence. That we were then unable to make it beyond the group stages at AFCON in Gabon is a matter that relates to how we were able to then deploy that raw material that was assembled to good use, to optimum benefit for the country.
Let's talk about, I'm going to jump in right there. Let's talk about this current crop of national team players. You spoke about the national colors. I'm sure that represents our pride as a people. And I want to take you back right before they left, the preparations of the national team. Do you think they had adequate preparation to prepare for Gabon? And do you think that as government you did enough to prepare them for Gabon?
We must demystify or debunk the belief that it is government's responsibility to prepare teams when it comes to these sort of assignments. So when we speak about governments, there are several tiers of governance intervention. There are things we should not do as government.
Maybe let's go through the things that you should do. What can you just list what as government you should do in terms of preparation?
So as government, what we should do is we get a work plan from the National Association through the Sports and Recreation.
Did you get the work plan for this current campaign?
No, we didn't.
You did not get a work plan?
Yes.
So you're saying that ZIFA did not submit a work plan through the SRC? There's no work plan on your table. So that didn't happen. What's next?
Ordinarily, on the back of that work plan, a budget also should be attached.
You did not get a budget?
We did get a budget.
You did get a budget. Yes. So how did you get a budget and not get a work plan when the budget comes with the work plan?
We did get a budget, which was speaking to the whole AFCON campaign. Okay, that as far as this particular AFCON campaign is concerned, the Warriors will need $1 million. Okay, in order for them to be able to acquit themselves. And we did intervene as government and did facilitate for the provision of $1 million. That is the highest intervention by government in football since independence.
So you're confirming that you gave $1 million to the preparations for the national team?
For the campaign.
For the campaign, yes. For the Gabon campaign.
Yes. Yes, we did. We did intervene. I did make the announcement. ZIFA did confirm that. So that was done.
After giving all this money, $1 million, what do you do as government to make sure that it does what you have signed it for? Yeah. Is there any structure? Is there any follow-up method? Is there a way that you make sure that this money does not end up not going on this campaign?
National sport associations are well aware that where taxpayers' money is used, my permanent secretary, who's the accounting officer of the ministry, then always makes a follow-up through his financial director to make sure that an audit is conducted to check whether or not the money that would have been availed, which is taxpayers' money, would have been deployed to good use. So we do that. We did that in respect of several engagements where government money has been involved during the course of 2016. So I can assure you that we don't just throw money away like that. If it is government money that is coming from Treasury, that is coming from the fiscus, we have an obligation as a ministry through the accounting officer to make sure that that money is.
So if you gave $1 million to the Warriors, why did they boycott? Why did they stage the most embarrassing episode in terms of diplomacy and respect for the vice president, who happened to be the acting president at the time, by not engaging with them or just sitting with them to have sadza and beef?
Yes. I can't answer that question. Why did they boycott? I don't know why they boycotted. It is true that at the time of the dinner, I had made an announcement to the press and to the nation that we had secured indeed $1 million to cater for the welfare issues or for the provisions of the Warriors. And it is regrettable that the Warriors decided to boycott that dinner, which had been arranged as a send-off party for them and was going to be graced at the highest level of the country, because the vice president of Mnangagwa at that time was the acting president, of the republic, and we are very disappointed by that behavior, both on the part of ZIFA as it is on the part of the players, that such a thing would happen. We think that it made us sit back and introspect and begin to say, Is our system producing athletes? Is this what should happen? I mean, the ramifications for that action were far-reaching in terms of the damage to brand Zimbabwe. And these are things that we would not want to see happening again.
So on that note, Zimbabwe, we are going to take a break, but stay with us as we get to find out more from the Minister of Sport and Recreation on all things that are sport, everything that makes us great as a nation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Zimbabwe, to Sports Perspectives, a show that brings you into the underworld of sports and definitely gives you a lighter perspective to all things that are sport. Like I said earlier on, we're joined today by the Minister of Sport and Recreation, Comrade Makhosini Hlongwane. And before we left in the first segment, he was talking about the $1 million prize, not wasn't even a prize money, the $1 million donation or $1 million money of support that they gave to the Warriors. My question quickly then is, you gave the Warriors $1 million. There is a strong belief that as government, you seem to jump so high when the boys demand money, financial support, whatever it is. But when the girls, the Mighty Warriors, who are also a national team, demand the same, government tends to drag their feet. What is your take on this?
I can confirm that government does not tolerate a policy of discrimination on the basis of gender. I've stated this in Parliament, that government, through its various ministries, does speak to gender equality, does speak to the sensitivities that come out of an absence of balance from coming out of not recognizing the fact that the way that we're gendered as a demographic. So that is very important. Now, in respect of the particular matter that you refer to, of the Mighty Warriors versus the Warriors, I want to state categorically here that we don't discriminate against the Warriors.
Honorable Minister,
Yes.
the boys right now, as we speak, probably have a minimum of $10,000 in their pockets.
I'm aware.
You're aware of that?
Yeah.
And you're also aware that the girls, upon their return, pretty much picked up about $5 at the airport.
Right.
Now, if you're talking that there is no discrimination or discrepancy
Yeah.
from a young man who has $10,000, with all due respect to him, and a young lady who gets $5 upon return to go home,
Yeah.
$20 at most.
The untold story about the Mighty Warriors is that they were in fact paid their allowances for participation at the Olympics, right? So I don't have the figures with me, but they were all paid. All athletes that participated at the Olympics in Rio in the Summer Games of last year, government made sure that they are paid. And that, upon their arrival, ZOC saw it in its wisdom to pay them a transport allowance of $5 is very unfortunate and it's regrettable, and it's something that should never happen again. And the ministry did call the Zimbabwe Olympic Committee to order and to make sure that those kind of issues are redressed going forward. But they were paid their allowances for participating at the Olympics. So an impression should not be created that government did not pay the Mighty Warriors and yet it rushed to pay the Warriors. Obviously, the levels of allowances for participating in different sporting events are also different. Now, but I want to say that we are battling with a burden of discrimination on the basis of gender that is part and parcel of our society. And we must admit that as a society, we are sick if we don't realize that our girls, our women are important partners in national development. You are aware, and it is on public record, that I did put together a committee made up of members drawn from the corporate sector, right? Because all the time we felt, okay, maybe people don't quite like working with government on some of these projects. We put together a committee that is made up of luminaries from the corporate sector, and with a specific mandate of raising resources for this for the Mighty Warriors. That committee has been in place. The resources have not been forthcoming, both from the private sector as well as from the public sector. Therefore, if that is the case, we must begin to say as a country, who are we as a people? How do we approach our things? Are we suffering so much from the dominance of patriarchy and dealing with issues of misogyny that we are not able to attend to an issue of this of this magnitude? So there is a general psyche across the country that speaks to our inability to respect women.
Having said that, I'm going to go back to the boycott that the Warriors did. Yeah. Going forward, we're not going to dwell much on that, but going forward as a ministry in your national sports policy, we know that you've spoken about the Commission of Inquiry as to what happened, maybe the preparations and so on. Is there a way that your policy will tackle and make sure that this doesn't happen? Yes. That the national team players who are supposed to show leadership and show respect and be role models to our young players never get to do this embarrassing act? As a ministry, what are you putting in place? If
you get our policy on Team Zimbabwe selection policy, that's exactly the issue that it tackles. Who gets into the national team? If somebody has got a record of doping, we should be able to pick it up from our structures, all the way from the grassroots, through the system that were put in place, which is called the Community Sports and Recreation Club system, which then feeds into the expanded National Youth Games strategy. We should be able to pick the record of any athlete that comes out of that system and then eventually makes it into Team Zimbabwe. Where we have reasonable belief that this athlete has leaned on the negative side of things previously, be it vandalism, be it bad behavior in camp, be it vulgarity and indecency, all those kind of things, they will not make it into Team Zimbabwe. You see, sport and recreation is different from many other disciplines in that a person who is processed through the system of sport and recreation goes through a university of life. When you go through sport and recreation, you know how to be tolerant, you know how to accept difference, you know how to accept defeat, you know how to compete with dignity, you know how to respect, and so I can go on the list, the Olympic values. So the national Team Zimbabwe national selections policy deals with that particular matter. But I must add that in the national sport and recreation policy, we have a whole priority area on sports diplomacy. In that area, we are saying people that become members of Team Zimbabwe become ambassadors of the country. And therefore, their behavior must be speaking to their ability to raise the level of brand Zimbabwe in terms of their communication, in terms of their ability to represent, and so I can go on the list. So this is very, very important. That's why we're trying to understand in this particular episode of the boycott that you speak about, what is it that happened? We don't have information.
Do you think they were driven by a mercenary mentality?
I wouldn't say that.
There's a whole debate now that the boys are being labeled as being mercenaries, that all they wanted was money ahead of national pride.
The committee of inquiry that the SRC has instituted is going to be bringing me the answers. They're going to furnish me with the report. It is only after reading that report that I'll be able to make with a very definite assurance that this is the behavior, this is why this is where it was coming from, this is what is sponsoring the behavior, and then we take it from there.
Well, there you have it, Zimbabwe. Are they mercenaries? National pride? Your take on the conduct of the Warriors before the Gabon, during the campaign, of course, and as they played in Gabon, representing our great nation. Stay with us as we go for a break. We'll be right back for the third and final segment. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Tinashe Mapuranga, your host for the program Sports Perspectives. Today we've got the Minister of Sport and Recreation, Comrade Makhosini Hlongwane, to whom we're discussing about all things related to sport. Honorable Minister, obviously through the SRC you superintend over just over 50 national sports associations. And over the years, we've seen some national sports associations, the leadership of some national sports associations, presidents thereof, and their boards running individual sport associations as their own little fiefdoms. What's your take on such associations?
First and foremost, we have declared 2017 the year of governance. And at the end of the first quarter, there are certain demands that the SRC is demanded from the national sports associations in respect of governance issues. We reject outrightly the privatization of national sport associations by anyone. We don't condone that kind of behavior. We have a very dim view of what I call the sultanization of authority within national sport associations. National sport associations, by their very nature, come into being through an electoral process, which is ordinarily supposed to be a democratic process, with full access and participation by stakeholders as would have been defined within their constitutions. Therefore, the whole idea of running what is ordinarily a public asset, if you are talking about tennis, I'm just giving an example, and I'm not saying there's an issue. If you are running tennis as a private organization, you are taking tennis away from the people. You are running against the grain of what we're trying to achieve, the democratization, the institutional democratization of sport through what I call democratic accountability of the governance systems of sport. And we will not be comfortable with that sort of a thing. And therefore, we think that National Sport Association administrators should understand sport is a public right, right? It's a right for every individual, and it's a public asset.
Do you think there's democracy in the way football is run?
In the way football is run, I cannot make a direct comment in respect of that, because you're asking me a question that resides on the operational side of things, right? How ZIFA is running its structures, whether or not that is democratic. I can't make.
There's been a fight between ZIFA, the SRC, and government, where when you have tried to put your foot down, ZIFA quickly goes to FIFA and says government interference.
Yes.
Now, your 2017 motto that you have instituted through the SRC, do you not think that you're just going to go into this wall where ZIFA will talk about government interference? How will you be able to circumvent this animal called the FIFA that ZIFA runs to every time you seek to institute these democratic processes that you're talking about?
We have taken a decision as government that every association has to comply with governance issues. We think that it is in the best interest of sport in Zimbabwe, as it is in the best interest of sport globally. It is in the best interest of any international confederation that their association in Zimbabwe runs things according to law, runs things according to international best practice, runs things according to the accepted norms and standards of how to steer a public entity forward. And to be honest with you, we don't really care who it is. If Zimbabwe is going to be visited by suspensions for reason that Zimbabwe is requiring compliance with the governance issues, we are prepared for that. It's not a problem at all. So if anybody thinks that they are going to hide behind an international confederation under the banner of government interference, they are mistaken, because we are prepared for that.
There's been so many financial qualms that have come to the fore with regards to Zimbabwe cricket, yes, where players have boycotted, where money has been alleged to be siphoned. I see that the SRC rushes to institute these commissions of inquiry for football, but we're yet to see such in terms of cricket, in terms of rugby. We had the rugby women's national team only last year. They pretty much footed their own camp. And yet, we are also privy to the fact that government did give some money into rugby. Now, was there a commission of inquiry for the national women's rugby team that camped last year?
There wasn't. But I can tell you that next week, myself and my permanent secretary, as well as the SRC, we are meeting the Zimbabwe Rugby Union to deal with issues that we think situate around what could begin to come out as administrative challenges within the structure of the Zimbabwe Rugby Union, with a view to trying to understanding the character of the problem, but beyond that, to saying how do we prescribe working together a solution that will deal with the issues. We understand there are power struggles, within the Zimbabwe Rugby Union structures. So government is very interested in what is going on in there. Now, in respect of cricket, I must tell you that the Sports and Recreation Commission has been engaging cricket. Just now, both in the month of January and in the month of December, the Zimbabwe Cricket Union, or Zimbabwe Cricket Board, was engaged by the Sports and Recreation Commission with a view to understanding exactly the issues that you mentioned, the issue of finances, to say, why do you have such a bloated debt that gets to almost 20 million, and what are you doing about that? And it is my understanding from my briefing that the board did proffer answers as to what it is they are doing, including the fact that they are in fact servicing that debt, which we think has a negative effect for the entire sports sector, not just for cricket, and want our National Sport Association books to be clean.
Having said that, you've said that ZIFA has complied and worked closely with government.
Yes,
in certain instances, which brings me to also, I won't call it a strong belief, but generally that you and Philip Chiang are buddies, that you are friends. So naturally you would defend his association. What do you have to say about that?
Well, it's false. First and foremost, Chiangwa is president of the biggest sport code in the country, and government has a vested interest in what goes on in football. This is true of Zimbabwe as it is true of any other country on the African continent, as it is true of any other country, indeed, throughout the world.
Thank you very much for watching. My name is Tinashe Mapuranga. Today we had the Honorable Minister, Comrade Makhosini Hlongwane, the Honorable Minister of Sport and Recreation. It's been great having you on the show. Thank you very much, and we hope to bring you back on the show as we deliberate on your national policy in a couple of months. That does it, Zimbabwe, for the show Sports Perspectives. Catch us every Saturday, 5:30, right here on ZBC. From me, Tinashe Mapuranga, and the team behind the scenes, it's God keep you, God bless you, and God protect you.